17 years old, I was so excited about life, and I thought I was invincible. I was a martial artist. I was engaged in battle on a weekly basis. I would wake up in the morning ready to go, ready to fight, and I had defeated countless foes. I was 150 pounds, so I wasn't that big. And one day rolled around, and there stood in front of me this 280-pound man from the military, and he decided that it was time for us to wrestle in an official capacity. This was sanctioned. But I hadn't lost in a long time. And I said, yes, let's go. And in about 30 seconds, I was on my back, with no air in my lungs, looking up at the sky, wondering what decisions I had made. And the person who trained me bent down and looked over me, and he said, "Pride goes before destruction." And he left. And I sat there, and in a sense, it was pounded into my brain. Pride goes before destruction. And I thought a lot about pride and the prideful decisions I had made and how painful they were. And I want you to think for a moment with me about this demon called pride, this emotion that we have, and how Satan actually uses pride on a daily basis. The devil himself uses it as one of his greatest tools. Think back to the Garden of Eden. You have Adam and Eve, and Satan tempts Eve, and he says, you can be like gods. You can elevate yourself. You think about Cain after he had killed his brother. Cain's offering was not accepted. Abel's was accepted. Remember the words that God asked Cain. He said, if you do well, won't you be accepted? Just do a good job. But he wanted more than that, didn't he? He wanted to be elevated. He wanted the glory and the praise. He wanted his light to shine in a way that was perverse and wrong in God's eyes. And it drove him to murder his pride. You think about the king of Israel, King Saul. Remember what got under his skin? They said, Saul has killed his thousands. And then they said, but David has tens of thousands. And that angered Saul. That hurt his pride. Well, why? If he had done well, he was accepted. He was already king. Why did that irritate him so much? You think about in Jeremiah's day, the children of Israel were told to return to God, return to the old paths. And what did they say? This was brought to my attention this morning. They said, no, we will not. In James chapter 4, verse 6, James writes, but he, God, gives more grace. Wherefore the scripture says, God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. I don't want God's resistance in my life. And that's where I think we should start. In your life, are you seeking a walk with God, or are you seeking resistance from God? Pride is what will get in the way every time. It's you that gets in the way of you. God is not in your way, stopping you from getting to heaven, saying, I don't really want you here, but if you do a good enough job, I'll let you in. It's your pride that stands as an obstacle to your entrance into heaven. I want you to consider some of the things that pride brings. From Scripture, you can look at Proverbs 11, verse 2. When pride comes, then comes shame. But with the lowly is wisdom. A prideful man, a prideful woman will experience shame in their life. You prop yourself up as the arbiter of all knowledge and goodness. You elevate yourself. Well, how easy is it for you to be brought low? With the mistakes that you make, that I make, it is so easy for us to slip and look stupid almost on a daily basis. Shame comes with pride. Isn't it liberating? I have some good friends, some friends that attend this congregation. They have made it clear that it is liberating to look at yourself and not take yourself so seriously. And it has taught me a valuable lesson. Less shame, less pain of embarrassment. How about this? Pride brings perversion. Proverbs 16:5, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to Jehovah. Though hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. The prideful are an abomination. They are a perversion to God. They are something that is disgusting. There is an idea today that maybe you were born the way that you are, and how could a loving God look at you who is born this way with certain proclivities? And how could God create you that way and then expect you not to be that way? It seems unfair, doesn't it? That's what's proposed. It's unfair. It is not what God intends. You are not created to partake in every one of your desires. You are created to live the life that God has built for you, and to live it in such a way that is pleasing to God. It's a good song, by the way. It's not necessary that you say, well, because I have this desire, it must be right. If you are prideful to where you take yourself and you raise yourself up and say, because I am, therefore this must be good, that is an abomination to God. That is disgusting to God. And that's perverted. That's not how God has intended your life to be. It's funny that entire movements today are under the umbrella of pride. And a lot of it is sexual proclivity. It's perversion. And you say, why would you choose pride as the umbrella term? Pride. Because it is you. It's you. Because I want it, it must be good. It must be right. That's not what God sees. That's an abomination. You've elevated yourself far above your station. Pride comes, as I said before, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. I've experienced this many times. You are not invincible, though you may think you are. You may get to a point where you feel strong. Remember the city of Tyre? Nobody could defeat Tyre. Nobody could defeat Tyre. And yet, in history, we see them fall multiple times until the great Alexander came in and not only leveled the city on the coast, but turned it into a bridge and leveled the one in the water as well. The great pride of Tyre brought it completely low. That's how we are as humans. Pride also brings hopelessness. Proverbs 26:12 says, "Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him." You know what? I have this figured out. I have something that wakes me up in the morning. It's a horrible noise that comes over my phone, and it wakes me up, and I question my life decisions for a moment. But alarms are a helpful thing because you can put a little title on them. And I have 3 titles. One of my alarms says, "You don't know everything." And I wake up and go, huh? And that's the first thing that I see. It's important to remember you don't know everything. You don't have all the answers. It's okay sometimes for you to say, "I don't know," and then go searching for the answers. It will help you draw closer to God if you are willing to admit, I am not there yet. I don't have every answer. I'm not in heaven. All my tears have not been wiped away. I need to be patient. I need to be patient. Pride also brings strife. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, the Apostle Paul would remind us, do nothing through faction or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than himself. And that's the way that we would avoid strife. We look at the needs of other people and we elevate them a little higher than us. Jesus would do a great job in preaching about this in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. He would say, call no man Raka, which would mean worthless. You worthless fool. I believe that your value is lower than my value because I am smarter than you. Call no man worthless. Well, why? Because God has established value. Jesus would then go on and die for the world. Romans 5:8, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And you could say, yeah, but they're a mess. But Jesus establishes the value. And so in order to avoid strife, we have to get our pride out of the way. Well, how do you do that? You have to elevate them above yourself. The needs of others need to come before your needs. And that is very, very difficult. It's difficult in every relationship. It's even difficult in marriages and parental relationships, the ones that should be the easiest. Sometimes it can get difficult. And you say things like, what about me? When do I get mine? When are you going to notice me? I think I have another 15 or so years on my children noticing me, giving back to me. When are they going to start paying me back for the things that I've done? It's not going to happen. Never, never, never. And is that fair? Well, it may not be monetarily even, but it is the way life and God has intended your life to be, and it's wonderful. So in order to avoid strife, you don't do things through vainglory for your own elevation. You look out on the needs of other people. And so how does pride appear in your life, in my life? How do I see it borne out? What are some areas that you're going to start to notice my pride is causing me to slip further and further away from God? And in doing so, what you're going to notice is the higher you elevate yourself, the farther away from God you will become. You actually lower yourself. Your ego gets in the way. And because of that, you will go farther and farther away from the people around you. You're going to see it in your relationships. So the first thing is an inflated ego. Galatians 6, 1 through 3 gives us a good mind into the servant. The Apostle Paul said, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of gentleness, looking to thyself, lest you also be tempted. Now, a prideful man cannot look to himself, lest he also be tempted. A prideful man is above that. I am done with temptation. And my temptations are not that big a deal. So if I can do it, why can't you do it? So you get this sort of inflated anger with other people when they're unable to accomplish what you perceive as simple tasks. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man thinks himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. James would say over and over again, do not be deceived, or do not deceive yourself. We convince ourselves the wrong thing. Don't let your inflated ego get in the way of you helping other people. And that happens a lot more than we may think. What about a lack of forgiveness? Mark writes, and whensoever you stand praying, forgive, if ye have aught against anyone, that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive your trespass. Why would that matter? If you are unwilling to forgive, isn't God just? Won't he see your heart and your attitude towards your brethren, towards your neighbor? What about Proverbs 24:17? Rejoice not when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he is overthrown. Why not? Isn't that so natural? I was driving down Forest Hill, Irene, and there's a 2-lane highway. This is a very embarrassing story, so I'll keep it brief. 2-lane highway, cross over, I think that's Shelby, and it's 2-lane road, double yellow line, and I'm going, and somebody flies around me. Apparently I wasn't going fast enough in the rain at night. And the police turn their lights on, and they get him right in front of me. And I went, you know that feeling. And I wanted to stop and roll my window down and, get out and dance, And in 5 minutes, I got a ticket. I was driving down the road. I turn left onto Hacks Cross, and I start going like 15 over because I'm just like, yeah. And I got a ticket in 5 minutes. And I sat there thinking, wow, isn't that amazing how that happens? And I paid it. Why shouldn't we be so excited when our enemy falls, when they get the sweet justice that we've been looking for? Well, the Proverbs writer would say, lest God sees that and does not dish out justice on them. Maybe he sees the way that you're treating them and thinks, here's a lesson for you. It's not good for our heart. God is looking out for us, and he's looking inward. Is this good for this person? Is this going to elevate and inflate their ego, cause them to be more prideful, which will take them away from me? Or is this going to bring them low so that they can come back to me? Those Israelites in Jeremiah's day, they said, no, we will not. And what did God have to do? Bring them low. God will resist the prideful. Resist them. What about the cruel? In Matthew 18:21 through 35, Jesus gives the parable of the unforgiving servant. He's cruel. And he has been forgiven a humongous sum that he will never be able to repay. And yet, when he goes and is owed just a little bit, he demands it and he throws him in jail. It's cruel. And it is not fair. He could say, well, you shouldn't owe anyone anything. I got mine taken care of. It's prideful. It's cruelty. And when God sees that attitude, it's disgusting to him. It's an abomination. Where did you begin to think that you are some great thing, some great person with no sin? What about the impatience that we see in our lives? The impatience. The king of the day, King Saul, in 1 Samuel 13:14, was given some ultimatums multiple times. He was impatient. He made bad decisions. And he did not follow God and what he wanted because of his pride. His pride was damaged. His ego was present. He was not a man with a heart after God's righteousness. And so 1 Samuel 13:14, but now thy kingdom shall not continue. Jehovah has sought him a man after his own heart. And Jehovah has appointed him to be prince over his people, because thou hast not kept that which Jehovah commanded thee. Saul was unable to see and make good decisions because of his pride. It blinded him. It clouded his vision. And he made these hasty decisions that were not what God had commanded him. And they were blatant, too. They were not, well, I thought this would be good. Or I didn't know how to accomplish it, so I figured this. He would say, get rid of all. And Saul said, well, I'll get rid of some. Do this. And Saul would say, well, I'll do this, but it'll look like this. And so he became prideful. He became his own God in a sense. He made his own decisions. What about this? He was unwilling. Some people are unwilling to do what God wants, even the people around them, what the people around them want them to do, because they think they are too important for that. In 2 Kings 5, start in verse 9 instead of verse 10. This is an account of a man named Naaman, who was a mighty man. He was a captain of a large number of warriors to Assyria, but he had leprosy. So he was very, very important, and he could get a lot done, and a lot of people listened to him, and they had to listen to him, and he was very successful in what he did, but he had this ailment on his skin. And this is an amazing thing that Jesus would do in the New Testament. He would show that there may be an ailment, but it would point to an ailment on the inside. He would cleanse something on the outside while revealing something, a problem on the inside. And this unwillingness that Naaman had to do simple tasks when given simple tasks was like a leprosy that had taken hold of his heart. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariots and stood at the door of the house of Elijah. Elijah was the prophet of God. And Elijah sent a messenger unto him, saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. Isn't it amazing that Elijah doesn't even come out and do some rain dance and make it about him and, do some flowery procession and have all these people come out. He just, as simply as he can, sends a servant and says, go do this. It's not a show, it's simple. But Naaman was wroth. He was angry and went away and said, behold, I thought he will surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of Jehovah his God and wave his hand over the place and recover the leprosy. I thought he would at least come out to me. Now, where does that come from? Where does that attitude come from? It comes from thinking you deserve that sort of attendance, thinking you are very important. And because he thought he was very important, he was given a remedy to an ailment, but he didn't want to do it because it was too simple for him. And that's just so bad. If you were sick and dying and someone said, all you have to do is walk 10 steps. But you sent it by text, and they said, well, at least you could come to my house and tell me. Why'd you text me? You deserve, or you owe me that much. I deserve that much. That's pride. Pride to the point where you are so unwilling to do basic things for your better and for the betterment of the people around you because of your pride. And that will lead us to be hard-hearted. In Hebrews chapter 3, there are people brought to remembrance. Starting in verse 8, harden not your hearts as in the day of provocation, like as in the day of the trial in the wilderness, where your fathers tried me by proving me and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was displeased with this generation, and said, they do always err in their heart. But they did not know my ways, as I swear in my wrath. They shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest haply there should be in any one of you an evil heart of unbelief, in falling away from the living God. But exhort one another day by day, so long as it is called today, lest any one of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. That's what pride can do. These complainers got to the point where their ego and what they thought they deserved made God so angry that he said, you will not enter into your reward. You will not come into the promised land because you are provoking me. You are making me furious. Even Moses, who believed that God was there, who spoke to God, was told by God, because you do not believe me, you will not enter into the promised land. Isn't that amazing that your heart can become so prideful and hardened that you provoke God to the point where you will not enter into your rest? Don't these things carry on to today? Don't they show something that is borne out in our lives too? Are your egos like mine easily inflated? Mine is. It is hard for me to forgive sometimes when I am looking at myself. When you say, well, like Peter, how often should I forgive my brother? 7 times in a day? Well, why would that matter if you were not prideful? As many times as it takes. I don't care, I just want the best for them. We can be impatient, we can be unwilling to do the basic things that God requires of us. And that can lead us to the point where we will not turn back to God. We will be hard-hearted, and we will not enter into our rest. We will not go to our promised land. Jesus promised, I go to prepare a place for you. If your heart is hard enough, you will not go. So the remedy for pride. There is a remedy, just like Naaman was offered a remedy. There is a remedy for you as well, and for me. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. He shall exalt you. I would like for him to lift me all the way up to heaven. I want to go all the way. So how low can you go? How much can I humble myself and look at my life and say, I want the best for other people? It's not so much about me as it is about them. 1 Peter 5:5-7 says, likewise, you younger, be subject unto the elder. Now here's a precedent that was given to these younger folks. Why? Because younger folks are headstrong, and they seem to have a knack for not wanting to be in subject to anyone. They want to rebel. They want to push back. Yea, all of you gird yourselves with humility to serve one another, for God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your anxiety upon him, because he cares for you. And then Philippians 2:5, the greatest example of humility is obviously Jesus the Christ. When the Apostle Paul wrote, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. It's not something that he was grasping at, holding on to, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. That is ultimate humility. He did things not for his reputation to be boosted and for people to give him a pat on the back and say, wow, good job. He did it so that he could accomplish his mission because he loved those around him. He cared more for the people around him than he did for himself. So, if your pride gets in the way, if you have a need for cleansing, but there is something that you can't let go of, there's a piece of you that you are still holding on to, I would ask that you let your pride go and come to Jesus. He has promised you a promised land where all tears will be wiped away. But like Naaman, you have to accept the way that he has offered. He has offered you to come to him the way he has asked. And you can do that by, like Naaman, went and dipped in the Jordan River, which is just a dirty river. We don't have that today. We have a nice, clean baptistry. You can be baptized this morning into Christ, put on Christ, and go to heaven with the rest of us. If you have another need, you have a prayer request, let it be known while we stand and while we sing.